The summer sun burned hard over the desert hills of eastern Arizona. The land was thirsty, the air dry enough to crack the skin. The rivers that once ran wide were now only dusty trails of stone. For miles, nothing seemed alive except for the low hum of insects and the stubborn wind pushing across the plains. On the edge of this fading world lived a man named Elias McGraw, a poor rancher with kind eyes and a worn hat that had seen too many summers. His ranch, a small stretch of land his father had left him, was barely holding together. The wooden fences leaned like tired men, and the old windmill creaked more than it turned. Elias had lost his wife Mary 3 years earlier, and since then he had lived alone with his cattle and his memories. When the drought came, it took everything it could: his water, his crops, his hope. The few cattle he had left grew thin, their ribs showing through their hides. He tried to keep them fed, but the grass had died long ago. Each morning Elias would ride out and search for any green patch of earth. Most days he came back empty-handed, his horse's steps slow and heavy. One morning, while following a stray cow that had wandered far from his land, Elias found himself crossing the old wooden fence that marked the edge of Apache territory. The sign that warned no trespassing had been there for decades, painted by someone long gone. He paused, reading the words with guilt, but then looked at the weak animal before him. The cow needed water, and just beyond the fence was a narrow stream, one of the few that hadn't yet gone dry. He sighed. "Just for a drink," he whispered, guiding his horse forward. The land on the other side was different, wild, quiet, and alive in ways his own property wasn't. The red earth stretched wide, scattered with mesquite and tall sage. Elias led his cattle to the stream and knelt beside them, letting the cool water run through his fingers. For the first time in weeks, he felt something close to peace, but he wasn't alone. From behind a cluster of juniper trees, 2 figures watched him. They stood tall, taller than most men, broad-shouldered and calm as stone. They were Naiche and Taza Longfeather, the twin daughters of the Longfeather clan, well known across the White Mountain Apache Reservation. They were called the Giant Sisters, not just for their size but for their spirit. People said the earth listened when they spoke, and even the fiercest men thought twice before arguing with them. They protected their land like hawks guarding their nest, and nothing escaped their eyes. Naiche, the older by minutes, had eyes sharp as flint and a voice that carried like thunder. Taza, quieter, often let her sister speak first but was no less strong. When they saw the rancher leading his cattle across their sacred stream, anger stirred in their hearts. To them, it wasn't just trespassing, it was disrespect. The land was part of their bloodline, their ancestors' resting ground. The sisters rode forward, their horses moving fast and sure. The sound of hooves startled Elias. He turned, wiping the sweat from his brow, and saw them, 2 towering women dressed in leather vests, their dark hair braided tight, their faces steady and fierce. "What are you doing here, rancher?" Naiche asked, her tone firm but not cruel. Elias stood up, his hat in his hand. "My cattle," he began, his voice soft. "They needed water. I didn't mean any harm. This is not your land," Naiche said. "You know that." "I do," Elias said quietly. "But I had no choice. The wells are dry back home. I just needed to keep them alive." Taza looked at the cattle, thin, tired, barely standing. She saw something in Elias's eyes that made her pause. Not arrogance, but desperation. Still, the rules were the rules. "You must come with us," she said. "The tribal council will decide what happens." Elias swallowed hard. He had heard stories about tribal councils, some fair, some not. But he could see that arguing would do no good. He nodded and followed. The ride back to the reservation was long. The sun was beginning to fall behind the mountains, painting the sky in gold and pink. Elias rode in silence, his heart heavy with fear. The sisters rode ahead, saying nothing, but both were thinking the same thing. Why did this man's eyes look so tired, so empty? When they reached the tribal hall, a small crowd had gathered. Word spread fast in small communities, and everyone wanted to see the man who had dared cross onto Apache land. The elders sat in a semicircle at the front, 5 old men and women, their faces calm but watchful. Naiche and Taza stood tall as they spoke. "This man brought his cattle onto our land," Naiche said. "They drank from our stream, damaged the grass near the sacred hills, and crossed our borders without permission." Elias stepped forward, holding his hat against his chest. Everything she said is true, he said. But I didn't come to steal or harm. My cattle were dying. I was trying to save them. There was a murmur among the crowd. One of the elders, an old woman named Grandmother Noka, leaned forward. Why not ask for help, rancher? She said, you live close to our border. You know our people? Elias lowered his eyes. Because I didn't think I deserved it, he said softly. My family's had problems with the council before. I thought you'd turn me away. The hall grew quiet. Nietzsche crossed her arms. You broke the law, she said. Even if your reasons were good, you disrespected our land. I know, Elias said. I can't undo it. But I'll fix whatever damage I caused. I'll work for it. There was something honest in his voice, something that didn't sound like begging, but like a man owning his mistake. Even Nietzsche, fierce as she was, felt her anger cool just a little. The elders spoke among themselves in their native tongue. Finally, Grandmother Noka raised her hand. We will not decide today, she said. You will stay near our people for 1 week. The Longfeather sisters will spend that time with you. See who you are, what kind of man you truly are. Then we will judge. Elias blinked. Stay with them? He asked, surprised. Taza nodded. It is our duty, she said. If you speak truth, we will see it. That night, Elias slept in a small cabin near the reservation edge. He couldn't rest. The sound of the desert wind, the weight of his guilt, and the thought of the sisters' hard stares kept him awake. He thought of Mary, his wife, who had always told him to treat others with respect no matter where they came from. She'd know what to say, he whispered to the empty room. The next morning, Nietzsche and Taza arrived early. They helped him feed the cattle, though neither spoke much. As the day went on, they began to see what kind of life he led. The fences were broken, the water pump barely worked, and his barn looked ready to fall apart. Yet Elias moved through it all with quiet strength. He fixed what he could, never complained, and always made sure the animals ate before he did. When the sisters asked why he worked so hard, Elias simply said, Because it's what I promised my wife before she passed. She loved this land even when it stopped loving us back. That answer stayed with them. Over the next few days, they learned more about him, how he once shared crops with nearby families, how he took care of a sick neighbor without asking for pay, how he still sent a small donation to the local school each year, even when money was tight. By the time the week neared its end, the sisters no longer saw a trespasser. They saw a man trying to hold on to the only life he knew. They didn't say it out loud, but both felt the same quiet thought forming. Maybe justice wasn't about punishment this time. Maybe it was about understanding. That night, as the moon rose over the desert hills, Nietzsche looked out toward Elias's land and said softly, He's not like the others, Taza. Taza nodded. No, she said. He's not. And though neither knew it yet, their decision in the days to come would change not only Elias's life, but their own, and the future of two communities long divided by pride and pain. The week passed slowly, each day bringing something new between the Longfeather sisters and Elias McGraw. The desert had a way of testing people, but it also had a way of revealing who they truly were. By the 5th day, the sisters had seen more of Elias's heart than they ever expected. Every morning before the sun rose, he was already outside, checking on his cattle and repairing fences. The sisters joined him without being asked. Nietzsche held the hammer, Taza carried the nails, and Elias worked beside them, his hands steady even though they were cracked from years of labor. They didn't talk much at first. The silence between them wasn't cold, and it was respectful, like three people learning to listen to the same rhythm of the wind. But little by little, the walls between them began to fall. One afternoon, as they rested under the shade of a mesquite tree, Elias offered them water from his canteen. It's warm, he said with a small smile, but it's all I've got. Nietzsche smiled back for the first time. Warm water is still water, she said. Out here, that's enough. Taza laughed softly, surprising Elias. Her laughter sounded gentle, almost like a song carried by the breeze. For a moment, the desert didn't seem so empty. That evening, they shared a meal of beans and bread. Elias had little, but he offered it with gratitude. As they ate, he began to tell them stories of his wife. Mary, how she used to sing while tending the garden, how she believed that every living thing deserved care, no matter who owned the land it grew on, she used to say, Elias murmured, staring into the firelight. The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to it. I didn't understand her back then, but I think I do now. The sisters exchanged a quiet glance. Those were words their elders had spoken for generations. For the first time, they realized that the man sitting across from them shared something deeper than they had imagined. The same love and respect for the earth, though he had come from another world entirely. The next morning, they invited him to walk with them through the reservation. Elias hesitated at first, unsure if the people there would welcome him. But Nietzsche assured him, "You are under our word. They will treat you as a guest." They walked past the small school, the craft house, and the fields where children played in the dust. Some of the older folks stopped and stared, whispering to one another. Others nodded politely. Elias felt uneasy but kept walking. When they reached the community garden, Taza bent down and brushed the soil with her hand. "This ground," she said softly, "feeds everyone here. It was once dry like yours, but we learned how to make it live again, together." Elias knelt beside her. "Would you show me how?" he asked. Nietzsche smiled. "Maybe one day," she said. "But first you must show us what you can give." That afternoon, Elias brought a few of his ranch tools to the garden, an old shovel, a broken plow, and some spare wire. The children watched as he fixed a broken fence around the vegetable patch, explaining every step in simple words. "A fence," he said, "isn't just to keep things out. It's to keep things safe." The children listened and the elders nodded quietly. For the first time, the rancher wasn't an outsider. He was part of something. Later that evening, the sisters sat by the fire with grandmother Noka, telling her what they had seen. "He's an honest man," Taza said. "He works harder than anyone I've known," Nietzsche added. "He didn't come to steal. He came because he was losing everything, and he still tried to do what was right." Grandmother Noka closed her eyes, thinking deeply. "Then perhaps this trial was not for him," she said slowly. "Perhaps it was for you to see the strength in mercy." The sisters were silent. They knew the old woman was right. The next morning, the tribal council gathered once more. The sun rose bright and golden over the mountains, and the air was still. People filled the small hall, curious to know what would happen. Some believed the rancher should pay for his trespass. Others whispered that maybe it was time for peace. Elias stood before the council again, his hat pressed to his chest the same as before. But he was not the same man. His eyes were no longer filled with fear. They were calm, like someone who had accepted whatever was coming. Nietzsche stepped forward first. "We brought this man before you," she said, "because he crossed our borders and let his cattle drink from our stream. We believed he had disrespected our land." She paused, looking at Elias. "But after spending 7 days with him, we learned something else. He loves his land the way we love ours. He has suffered loss and hardship, yet he still stands. He asked for no mercy, only a chance to make things right." Taza continued, her voice soft but strong. "We believe punishment will not teach him anything he hasn't already learned. Instead, we ask that he work with our people, share what he knows about ranching, help us care for the fields, and in return learn our ways." A low murmur spread through the room. Some of the elders exchanged thoughtful glances. Grandmother Noka raised her hand and silence fell. "Elias McGraw," she said, "would you accept this?" Elias looked up, surprised. "Yes, ma'am," he said. "With all my heart," the old woman smiled gently. "Then so it shall be." That day marked the beginning of something neither side could have imagined. Elias spent the next months working with the Apache community. He taught them how to repair ranch equipment, how to care for sick livestock, and how to manage pastures during drought. In return, the people taught him how to read the land differently, how to listen to the wind, how to find hidden springs, and how to plant according to the moon. He often worked beside Nietzsche and Taza, who had become like sisters to him. Together they built new fences, dug irrigation ditches, and repaired the community barn. The children began calling him Uncle Elias, and even the elders spoke of him with quiet respect. Sometimes, when he sat by the fire at night, Elias would look up at the stars and whisper a prayer of thanks for the chance he'd been given, for the people who had forgiven him, and for the 2 women whose courage had saved his life. One evening, months later, Grandmother Noka called the entire community together. Elias didn't know why until he saw what they had built, a new well, dug deep and strong, standing between his land and the reservation. A sign was carved into the stone beside it, "The Well of Friendship, shared by 2 lands." Nietzsche placed her hand on Elias's shoulder. "You see," she said with a smile, Sometimes justice is not about who is right or wrong. It's about who chooses to make things right. Elias couldn't speak. He only nodded, his eyes wet with quiet gratitude. Years passed, and the memory of the trespass faded into something better. A story that parents told their children about forgiveness, understanding, and the power of kindness. The fences between the ranchers and the Apache lands no longer divided hearts. People traded goods, shared harvests, and helped each other when the rains were late. When Elias grew old, he still visited the sisters often. They would sit together on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in orange and red. "You saved my life," he told them once. Naishe laughed. "No, rancher," she said. "You saved your own life. We just showed you the path," and as the sun dipped below the hills, their laughter echoed across the desert, a sound of peace, born from what had once been a mistake. It became a story that lived on for generations, the tale of how two giant Apache sisters took a poor rancher to tribal council, and how their choice didn't just change one man's fate, it changed the heart of a whole community.